Welcome to Road to Reinvention 2020, our sixth annual signature conference and our first ever virtual conference. We're delighted you could be here with us today. In each of the last 5 years, I've used the metaphor of a digital tsunami. It's shorthand for the massive business transformation that is being unleashed by digital technologies. But this year, a catastrophic health crisis, the global coronavirus pandemic, introduced an unimaginable degree of destruction into the world, affecting every person, every society, and every business. Accelerating through the turn is a reflection of the collision of these two themes, digital transformation and the pandemic. The themes are business continuity, survival, business model disruption, and a new equilibrium. The world as we know it has changed. Customers of the future will demand a different set of products and services from us, or maybe a different mix of products and services. We have to figure out what these products and services are and how to deliver them both efficiently and with resilience. We have to understand how to work collaboratively and innovatively with a distributed workforce. These are the challenges that we have to solve if we are to succeed in the post-pandemic world. We've invited a number of talented executives today to share their stories from a diverse set of companies. Some are successful, some are in a good place, some less so. And my hope is that we take away lessons from each of their stories and think about how we might apply them in our own transformation journey so that we may be more successful. And it won't surprise you to learn that software is still the key asset. We must still all be software companies. It is software that will get us through this crisis. Let's talk about Le Tote. Le Tote is a 7-year-old startup. It provides rental clothing to women. Most of their customers are professional women. They have an amazing suite of software. They use artificial intelligence to predict the clothes somebody might like, especially the fit. They use artificial intelligence to predict demand. They looked at supply chain management systems, and because their need is for reverse logistics, they found that no system met their standards. So they built their own reverse logistics supply chain system. And then in 2019, Lord & Taylor, the storied luxury retailer, the oldest department store in the US, 196 years old, became available. And Le Tote leapt at the opportunity. They got it for a good price. You might be wondering what the synergies were. What the synergies were, Le Tote would apply its technology prowess, its software prowess, to improving the productivity and performance of Lord & Taylor. Lord & Taylor, in turn, had brand, a really high-end inventory, a place where customers could go try out clothes, and perhaps increase, or decrease, I should say, the cost of customer acquisition for Le Tote. The acquisition closed in November 2019. And by January 2020, just 2 months later, news of the coronavirus pandemic began leaking out of China. By March, major cities were shut down, the workforce was sent home, and the rug was pulled out from under Le Tote. If you're not going to work, you certainly don't need clothes for work. Today, Le Tote and Lord & Taylor have both filed Chapter 11. We're going to hear from Rakesh Tandon, the CEO, in a few minutes about the future of these two companies. But when we were planning for the conference, he did share that the residual value of Le Tote was its software assets, the suite of software that they built, that they hoped would be valuable to another luxury retailer. Let's think about United next. United was hit with an unprecedented decline in demand. For the last 20 years, air passenger travel has increased threefold. This year, revenues are going to be down 50%. In a high fixed cost industry, that is very, very hard to cope with. Business travel is basically down to almost zero. So what do you do if you're United Airlines? You go where the customers are. And who are the customers today? They're leisure travelers. Yes, leisure travelers are still traveling, though perhaps not at the rate as they were last year. But leisure travelers are a different customer segment than business travelers. They're price sensitive and they're looking for deals. United came up with an offering called Shop by Map, which allows you to say something like, I would like a beach vacation on these dates, and I would like to know where I can go for what price. And so the idea is you can say, I would like to go to a beach for $300 an airfare, and they will actually allow you to search that way. It's a wonderful addition to sort of the search features that they already had on their app. And they've, of course, introduced features like flexible tickets where you don't have to pay a cancellation anymore. So United is accelerating through the turn by going to where its new or the more important customers are these days. Now let's talk about IQVIA. IQVIA is the largest contract research organization in the world. They run clinical trials for big pharmaceutical companies. At any given point in time, there are hundreds of trials running, if not thousands of trials. And when the pandemic hit, think about what you do when you've got patients who are enrolled in these trials. You have to monitor them to make sure that they're safe. You have to monitor them to know if they're getting better on the meds or not. They may even need another dose of medicines. Then you throw in vaccine development and a potential treatment for the coronavirus. And I'm sure we would all want that these clinical trials continue to be offered and hopefully at a rapid rate. Well, what is the solution then? Well, the solution is decentralized trials or virtual trials. Take the clinical trial to the subject. Don't wait for the subject to come to you. And then you also have to deal with questions like authenticity. As you know, there's plenty of counterfeit drugs out there. And at a time like this, you can bet your bottom dollar that there will be some unscrupulous operators who are trying to palm off coronavirus treatments that aren't authentic. All of these are challenges that can be addressed with technology and especially software. IQVIA has a software platform that you can see behind me, or at least you can see the interface behind me, that allows their subjects to continue to enroll in trials, continue to be treated, continue to be monitored using a decentralized offering based on a software platform. Let's talk next about Carbon. Carbon is a 3D printing company. Joe DeSimone, the co-founder and now the chairman, talks about software-driven chemistry. So it is software creating the products using resins that you and I might want to buy. For a while, they were making soles for running shoes made by Adidas. You might think about it the following way. I'm 150 pounds, 5'9", and I wear a size 10 shoe. You could be 225 pounds, 6'3", and wear a size 10 shoe, and you and I would get the same shoes at our favorite retailer. Now you can get custom shoes, bespoke shoes made at scale. They were also making bicycle seats, bicycle helmets, car parts, things like that, everything that needed to be custom at scale. And then the pandemic hits. What do you do if you're Carbon? You pivot to making things that really help. This has helped the country. They pivoted to making face shields and nasal swabs. Look at the green resin in the sole of the shoe and in the face shield. It's the same chemical. It's the same material. It's software-driven chemistry reprogrammed to make face shields and nasal swabs instead of soles for shoes. Moreover, they have shared their software, their new design software for making face shields with others who would like to help out by making these products as well. This is extending your core competence into new markets. Carbon is accelerating its efforts, its digital transformation efforts towards new markets. Now let's turn it back to us. How do we win? How do you win? It's about running or racing with machines, not racing against machines. It's about human ingenuity combined with the power of software, the power of digital that allows us to win. So let's get a little more specific. I call this my DNA slide. Just like DNA defines us, we know the DNA defines who we are, how we act, what we do. Software is the DNA of an organization. We must think software first. We must lead with code. It is about software-led innovation. Let's take a few examples. The first step you have to do, you have to engage in, is you have to reimagine your business. Let's talk about Peloton. For those of you who attended this conference in 2018, you know that I talked about Peloton then. It was still a private company, and I was a big fan. Subsequently, during the pandemic, I also went out and bought a pandemic. You could call it a splurge because these bikes are rather expensive. But you can now work out from home. It's a very, very high quality product. They also offer a treadmill. In fact, now they have two treadmills and two bikes, one higher end, one lower end, still pretty expensive, and an app and a fantastic library of content. It connects to your Apple Watch, it connects to a heart rate monitor and a variety of other things. And they're very, very good at motivating you to exercise. During the pandemic, their revenues have grown, their membership has grown, and more interestingly, the number of times each of their members works out has also grown. That's a sign of engagement. They went public about slightly less than a year ago, and their stock market valuation at that point was around $8 billion. Earlier this year, it was about $16 billion. Now it is over $30 billion. Now we can argue about the valuation of this company, but even if you were to have it, it speaks to building a product that will be valuable today and in the future. Admittedly, Peloton designed its product and services before the pandemic, but it still illustrates the case of how we can design a suite of products and services that are appropriate in the new equilibrium. Then you have to configure your assets. Now, what I mean by that is, what are the assets and capabilities that you will need to compete in the future? Well, let's start by talking about Disney. Disney has always been a digitally savvy player, and you're all obviously familiar with Disney Plus. But let's look at how they got there. So they, of course, have proprietary content, and they've had that for years. They went out and bought 21st Century Fox, which gave them another huge library of content. They yanked their products out of their content out of Netflix. And then they went out and bought BAMTech. BAMTech is Major League Baseball's technology distribution service. It was what allowed us to watch Major League games on our smartphones, for example. So they now have the content and they have the platform. All they needed was customers, of course. They have plenty of loyal customers. Here's what's interesting. Since they launched, they had predicted they would get to 60 million customers by 2024. Well, they have 60 million customers today, but it takes software, it takes content, it takes a streaming platform, it takes a variety of different assets to be able to deliver these services. Let's look next at PACCAR. PACCAR is one of the largest trucking companies in the United States, and everyone knows that the future of vehicles is autonomous vehicles. When autonomous vehicles will actually be mass market, nobody really knows. But it is something that we have to invest in to get to the future. So how do you actually get the capabilities that you may not have today? So if you're Disney, perhaps you can purchase some of these assets. PACCAR, on the other hand, chose to go a different route. This is a long journey requiring a lot of technical expertise. The artificial intelligence itself, the science itself, has not been finalized. The technologies keep evolving. And it is very, very difficult for an established company to actually acquire the capabilities to build software of this sophistication. So Tesla, of course, has gone its own route, but Tesla is a software company. GM and Ford went out and bought startups. And Packard chose to partner with a company called Aurora Innovation, founded by three of the leading lights of self-driving cars, one of whom we're going to hear from very soon, Sterling Anderson, who is the Chief Technology Officer at Aurora. And he's going to talk to us about how they, in partnership with Packard, are going to roll out a self-driving car. But this is about acquiring the assets that you actually might need to deliver a product that is in the future, is very, very sophisticated, but might be very difficult to go it alone. And then here's Samsung's Everland Amusement Park in Seoul, South Korea. This is a project that my research team and I at the center worked on with them. So they were using human experts to predict demand at their parks. Then they used publicly available commercial artificial intelligence to predict demand, because if you can predict demand accurately, you will actually be able to staff the park better, order better supplies, predict waiting lines at rides, and so on. And it turned out that the AI, commercially available AI, was actually not as good as the human experts because there's too much variation in demand. We actually worked with the commercial AI and showed that when you combine human ingenuity, human judgment with artificial intelligence, you actually get much better predictions of the demand at these parks. Now think about the fact that with the coronavirus pandemic, all the data that you have from the past is pretty much useless. So machine learning systems, which rely so much on data, aren't good enough. So we need to have human judgment combined with the sophistication of artificial intelligence and machine learning systems to be able to predict demand. I want to close with this. In racing, I started with a racing metaphor, so I'm going to close with the racing metaphor. You have to find your racing line. The racing line is the line through the track that allows you to complete the track in the shortest time possible. It is not the shortest path around the track. What this basically says is that as you exit a curve, you want to be in a position so that you can accelerate as quickly as possible when you hit the straightaway. You have to put yourself in a position to go as fast as you can when the road becomes clear. That is what all of us should aspire to. So what are the capabilities that we are building today? What are the investments we're making today? What is the strategy and vision that we are adopting so that we can accelerate when we hit the straightaway? With that, good luck for all of our journeys. Thank you very much for your attention.